Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Hope everybody is having a lovely, nice, soft landing to your week. Before we get to the weekend, we've got some headlines to attend to and a docket to review. Yesterday, we talked about Michael Sussmann. He was scheduled for a motions hearing. A lot of activity in this case, and that is to be expected because we've got trial here in May. And we talked about a lot of this on the channel, did deep dive videos on a couple of these things. Michael Sussmann, former Hillary Clinton campaign lawyer, charged with lying to the FBI, been indicted by the Durham prosecution, and so it's really getting close to crunch time. Yesterday, you can see all of these motions and minute orders and memorandums and notices and replies, and all of this has been going on very, very high volume over the last several days. And then we fast forward, we had a hearing that took place yesterday. Oral arguments on these motions. So the prosecution wants certain things excluded, precluded, included. The defense wants a bunch of stuff excluded because they don't want it to be introduced against Sussmann. And yesterday was the time for arguments. Now, because this is federal court, we don't get to hear any of that, much to my chagrin. But we were expecting to see a little bit of an update in the minute entries on the court docket. And of course, we get that. And I'm underwhelmed, to be honest. I was hoping for a little bit more here, but on April 27th, the minute entry comes out and it says, all right, proceedings held before the judge, Christopher Cooper, and its motion hearing as to Michael Sussmann. So let's break down what's going on here. It's a big kind of dense black hole of text, but we'll unpack it. Motion in limine filed by the United States. Durham is filing this motion. So we were arguing about that one. And I don't remember the specific details on that one, but there's a lot of these. So let's just keep going. We've got motion in limine to exclude testimony or notes from the FBI. We talked a great deal about this. Bill Priestap and General Counsel Tricia Anderson, they had notes from the interview where they said, Sussmann doesn't appear to be here on behalf of any client, blah, blah, blah. Turns out he was there on behalf of Hillary Clinton. So Sussmann's team wants that thrown out. We've got another motion in limine here filed by Sussmann. They want to preclude any evidence of the data that was in the Steele dossier. They don't want to be able to really talk about that or where it came from. So they're arguing about that. Motion to dismiss the case if they don't give tech executive number 1, Rodney Jaffe, immunity. Arguing about that. Motion to preclude special counsel from presenting evidence about attorney-client privilege filed by Sussmann. So the defense is just has a Swiss Army knife of different motions they're getting out to try to stop Durham from being able to make certain arguments. And so it was a juicy hearing. We're very excited about what was going to come out. Court tells us oral arguments heard, motions taken under advisement. Oh, man, the worst. That's it? That's all we got on all of it? Great. So what that means is the judge is going to just go back to his chambers and think about this for a little while and then type it all out into a document and order. Then we'll get the rulings and then we'll get some juiciness, I'm sure, because it's going to be consequential. These are really serious issues. If Durham can't make certain arguments, then Sussmann might win the case on that. The jurors might go, well, something's missing. Seems like we want to know a little bit more about the data, where that came from, the Steele dossier and who was behind that. And the judge says, no, I already ruled you can't talk about that. Might be a win for Sussmann. So there's a lot of eyeballs on this. You can see all the attorneys there, defense attorneys, Bosworth and Berkowitz, two high-powered attorneys from, I think, New York and DC areas. And so, they've got a big defense here. Why? Because this is the first domino in what could potentially be a cascade that really embarrasses the DNC. So they've got some law firms and some lawyers who are, know what they're doing out there. Sort of reminds me of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Very high-powered lawyers who, delivered a very good defense for not a good case, not quite the best defendant to have if you're a defense attorney, given the mountains of evidence. But anyways, you can see here, additional motions were filed subsequently. 427, we had a response by Perkins Coie. We've got a transcript of the actual hearing, which may be forthcoming. But Perkins Coie is responding, and so I'm not going to dig into all this here today, but wanted just to provide a quick update on what took place. But there is some other interesting news that came out here on the Sussmann story. Zero Hedge was sharing this story over from Sundance via The Last Refuge. And apparently there was a filing little snafu. Remember a couple days ago, we talked about the Substack story over from Technofog, who did the breakdown of some of the emails that came out from the Durham filing. And turns out, and I didn't get a chance to look at those actually, because I was talking about, I think, the other filing that also was interesting that day. But here, there was apparently too much personal information in those emails that were filed by Durham. It should have been filed under seal. It wasn't filed under seal, which means it's all public now. And that's what people were sort of raising their eyebrows about, saying that FusionGPS was actually engaging in conversations with the media, Washington Post and many others. And so the story goes, another significant filing by Durham special counsel was made on Monday night. And that's the one that we did talk about from Technofog. Background here, in a previous libel suit by Alpha Bank against FusionGPS, FusionGPS was that private company that was helping Perkins Coie generate the information, the opposition research. They were calling it legal research. We know it wasn't, but making these claims against Alpha Bank, saying that they were involved in the collusion with Trump. So they sued FusionGPS, said, we didn't do any of that. You're slandering. This is libel. You can't do any of this against us. And the Russian bank was able to get internal emails between FusionGPS and major media outlets as part of that discovery phase. Despite the lawsuit failing to advance, those emails are now evidence for John Durham to use in the case against Sussmann. Sussmann, Perkins Coie lawyer, accused of lying to the FBI. Former FBI legal counsel James Baker has said Sussmann told the FBI he was operating independently as a concerned citizen. Obviously, that was not true. Monday night, there was a new filing. John Durham deconstructed the nature of their defense. Technofog has a good outline here, which is why I referenced you over there. It is very good. But however, attached to the filing were exhibits supposed to be filed under seal that Durham, quote, accidentally did not seal right away. Uh-oh. He's a very experienced prosecutor. That's strange. Why would that accident happen? Very curious. The exhibit consists of the emails between FusionGPS and the media as the opposition research team attempted to push the Trump-Russia collusion story into the media. So that doesn't really sound like legal work. I mean, unless you're providing analysis or something, but that's not pushing the story. You'd be, researching the issues or doing some analysis on something that's happening. And if you wanted to go this policy route, you would not be allowed to do that. Here's why. These laws, the Constitution, prohibits you from becoming a dictator in this country. I'm sorry, you can't do that. So that is a little bit different. They're saying pushing that story into the media bloodstream, which would not really be legal work, not really be privileged documentation. And this would be something that would be more analogous to campaigning, right? You'd be sort of a campaign entity. The emails show how extensive FusionGPS co-founders Glenn Simpson and Peter Fritsch pushed the Trump story. Emails show also a coordinated effort of FusionGPS with multiple journalists, producers, and media outlets. Emails show from Politico, New York Times, CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of the hoaxers. And it just has all of the emails there. And so if you go over there, they actually link to all of this so you can see all the emails. But, FusionGPS over to Washington Post. Tom Hamburger is over there. We've got Jake Berkowitz over to another one, Tom Hamburger at the Washington Post. And they're all just sharing these emails talking about payroll, Merrill Banker during Alpha during this time. Looks like the deal happened in 2002. They say, here is Alpha and Merrill Lynch working together in the early 2000s. I'll send some more on this stuff. So FusionGPS sending emails over to the Washington Post. Hey, this is our political enemy, and we're just sort of funneling this news to you. But then they deliver this over to Perkins Coie, who hired them to do all of this research. Perkins Coie says, oh, this is perfect. This is a great narrative. You've got Rodney Jaffe, who is also involved in sort of concocting the hoax, and they just come up with this dossier. They give it over to Michael Sussmann. They're like, he's dumb enough to go talk to the FBI. And so they give it to him. He goes over there. He sits down with them. They say, Sussmann, when you get there, don't tell them you're here on behalf of Hillary, because if they know you're here on behalf of Hillary, it's going to be a big problem. Can you handle that? Sussmann, get it through your thick skull. And he says, I can do it. Put me in, coach. So he goes down to the FBI, and they sit there. And he's like, don't say I'm working for Hillary. Don't say I'm working for Hillary. Don't say you're working for Hillary. We got James Baker sitting there at the same table with them. And he says, Perkins Coie, we've got a lot of familiarity with them. We've been sort of, in the same wheelhouse for some time. They're in D.C. They represent a lot of people at the DNC. Mr. Sussmann here. Are you working for anybody else? Are you here on behalf of anybody? Sussman's like, this is my big moment. He's sweating from the eyebrows, just dripping all over the place. He says, no, I'm not. And James Baker's thrilled. He goes, oh my gosh, that's the right answer. Perfect. So now I can take this fake hoax and I can spread it all around the FBI. And so these two people passed their test. So then James Baker takes it over to two other people from the FBI. We've got Bill Prystap and Trisha Anderson. And James Baker tells both of them he wasn't here on behalf of anybody else. Great news. We can run with this. It's not conflict of interest information. So they go, let me write this down in our notes in case this becomes a problem later on. So they write it down in their notes. And then suddenly the story comes out, becomes a national story. Wow, Trump-Russia collusion right at the very end of a very rough election season. Donald Trump ekes through with the victory, but the hoax continues to dog his entire administration. It has been promulgated and left a stain that may have jeopardized his entire administration, many people might argue. So all of these emails are now coming out, and it's just outstanding because it shows that the media was in bed with Perkins Coie and FusionGPS, and the whole thing is just coming full circle. So absolutely outstanding. And this is going to be a very fun trial to follow. We'll continue to do so right here. Jumping over to President Biden, we like to check in on his schedule from time to time, make sure he's still active. You can see here he had a little bit of activity today. Here it's April 28th. In town, call, daily brief in the morning, delivered remarks in support of Ukraine, probably wants to give them more money. I think that is what he announced. He also meets with small business owners to discuss the small business boom under his leadership. Press briefing from Psaki, which is not really the president's schedule. And the president and the first lady are going to host their first official film screening showing HBO's The Survivor in honor of Yom HaShoah and the Holocaust Remembrance Week, which I'm sure it's a great film. Yeah, so that sounds like, good activities there at the White House. Movie time with the president. Here we have a couple clips from the president today. As we have been chronicling here, Joe Biden's on a slow decline, going faster day by day. This just happened, apparently, and I haven't even watched this clip yet. 11:36 a.m., April 28th. Benny Johnson over on Twitter says, Biden has a complete meltdown aneurysm on live TV when talking about Russia. And so this is from this morning when he was there talking about Russia, delivering remarks. Here today, 10:45 a.m., President delivers remarks on support for Ukrainians defending their country and their freedom against Russia's brutal war. So our commander-in-chief, who's supposed to deliver confidence and make sure that the world feels like we've got capable leadership, is here. Let's see how the president does. Let's back this up. All right, hold on.
Their hard work has played a critical role in ensuring Putin's strategic failure in Ukraine, and they should know that we know it. In addition to this supplemental funding, I'm also sending to Congress a comprehensive package of, that will enhance our underlying effort to accommodate the Russian oligarchs and make sure we take their ill-begotten gains. We're going to accommodate them. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
Oh,
but these are bad guys. This legislative package strengthens our law enforcement capabilities to seize property linked to Russia's kleptocracy.
There you go. He got it.
Their hard work.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's not so good. I know it's a hard word, kleptocracy. It's a hard word, and it's hard to string a lot of words together to form a cohesive sentence, but look, the policy behind it is just also very Joe Biden. It's sort of now we're going to be taking more private property from people. We've already experienced some of that here at home. Why should the Russians be immune from that? CDC under Joe Biden. It's our house now. You don't get any control over it. We get to tell you what to do with your property. Thanks for playing the game. Thanks. Here, Joe Biden's just saying, well, the Russians, those are our yachts now. Those are our boats now. We get to seize whatever we want. And we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe when Joe continues selling America out to China, they'll get mad at Joe or Hunter for violating some sort of term that he promised them when he was selling out American cobalt supplies. Made a video on that one yesterday. Maybe they'll, decide that they want to seize all Joe Biden's assets or all Hunter Biden's assets. And the concept of private property is just something that is a kind of false belief. It's a fiction that we just sort of entertain from time to time. It's not something that's a natural right that is sort of ingrained in the human experience that makes perfect sense for a functional society. It's just kind of a concept. It's private property as long as it serves our narrative, until it's not, until you do something that we don't like, regardless of who you are affiliated with, whether you actually are working for Putin or not, doesn't matter. You could just be a private citizen of Russia. You're now on the wrong team. Guess what happens? We take your private property. All right, that's the new standard. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that here in the United States and really throughout the world. So not a surprise. Let's see what else is happening with Joe. RNC is posting this one saying Biden sits quietly as staff herds the press away after just 3 minutes on camera. Mutters to himself, they never ask relevant questions. The ones I've been hearing have been quite relevant. Let's see here.
Ran here.
Mr. President, what is your current assessment of how much longer this war will last? Mr. President, what is your assessment?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
3 minutes. That's a small business meeting.
Thank you.
All right. So, I wonder what Joe's going to solve for them. I happen to run a small business. I own a small business here in Arizona, and I don't really know what Joe would do to come and help me if he sat down across the table. I'm being serious about this. Rob, you got 6 hours with Joe Biden. You can pick his brain about anything in the world you want. There's a lot of people in this world that I would relish that opportunity with. There's a lot of people I pay good money for that opportunity just to get 10 minutes with them to get their idea on what I should be doing or an opportunity that they see. Here, those small business owners are wasting their time and they know it. That's not very good business practice. Another clip from Joe Biden, this one from yesterday, 2:06, April 27, says, oh, this is the teacher clip. Joe Biden says to teachers about their students, they are not somebody else's children. They're yours when you're in the classroom, which is a scary thing. I don't have children, but I don't like how that sounds. I don't think I would like that. I mean, if I had kids, I hear a lot of parents like, oh, these kids, they're driving me bananas. So maybe you would say, yeah, they're yours. Take them for 6 hours or something like that. But I'm not so sure of that anymore because I've seen some of the things that Libs of TikTok is posting over there about what is being taught in these schools. But here we can see that Joe Biden has a different vision for America than I do. That's why he's president.
Have our students gain confidence enough to know what they can do, to reach in. We have an obligation. We have an obligation to help them teach and reach their potential. And you've heard me say it many times about our children, but it's true. They're all our children. And the reason you're the teachers of the year is because you recognize that. They're not somebody else's children. They're like yours when they're in the classroom. You represent a profession that helps them gain the confidence.
All right. Well, look, I can see if you want to frame this in a light most reasonable to the adverse party. Here, what you can say is that Joe Biden is saying, we want a culture where teachers are sort of treating kids like they would be treating their kids with discipline and rigor and intellectual honesty and good habits and do your chores and learn, get smart, get educated and all those nice values and things that sort of were a part of the experience that I felt like I was coming up in, but I could be wrong. But here we see that the culture is a little bit different and the educational system's taking a hard veer towards a certain conversation that a lot of people have some issues with. And so that same maybe old style belief that Joe Biden has about what this used to be like maybe 35 years ago when he was first in office, the whole culture has changed. And so this becomes a lot more scary when you start to see what Libs of TikTok posts about people saying that they are going to be doing things regardless of what the policies are. School comes out and says, we're not going to be doing it this way. And the teachers are saying, yes, we are, because this is a human right or whatever the new narrative is. So very interesting statement from the president, sort of endorsing, I think, the modern shift. I think really he knows what he's talking about. Joe Biden's been sniffing kids for 37 years. So let's jump over to locals. We've got grouchy old cat ladies here sharing a story saying that Biden tells teachers that kids are like yours when they're in the classroom. And we just played that one. Yeah, it's a strange one. It says, give me 4 years to teach the children and the seed I will have sown will never be uprooted. That's Vladimir Lenin saying that you get started in the educational system, you teach them young, and then you just have indoctrinated foot soldiers for the rest of your movement. Scary stuff. The Antikus is here talking about free speech must be stopped. Yeah, I saw this clip here from this fella and this woman who were on Twitter, and I think I bookmarked this at some time, but he was saying something about equitable speech. He very upset, both these people, very upset about Elon Musk buying Twitter. And their critique was, free speech is kind of a misnomer. It's a mischaracterization. It's a false dichotomy. It's not a real thing. What we need is equitable speech. And that was the first time I had heard that actual phrase. I've heard a lot of these types of new age phrases, things like multiracial whiteness. This is when there were reports that minorities, by some shock, were actually supporting Donald Trump. They said that can't be right because those people are not white racist males. And so they came up, I think at the Washington Post, in one of their board meetings, they sat down and they said, oh, I got an idea. Let's just call it multiracial whiteness. These are not white people who are acting white. And so they're kind of, embodying those racist white behaviors. And it was new to me. I sort of, wow, this is really fascinating that they're able to just smash all these concepts together that don't make any sense. Wow. But they're kind of doing the same thing here, saying that speech now has to be equitable. So if you have a fast tongue or too much logic, or if you're a little witty, or if you're a little bit too aggressive with your speech, or if you have an idea that somebody else doesn't like, you got to shut your mouth, stand aside, face your censorship like a good little slave, and just allow the entire oppositional party, the people who are defining the rules, to continue with their narrative, to continue moving forward with their political movement, and you remain silenced on the sidelines. And I think that's what's happening here. If you don't do that, you're not equitable. You're taking advantage because you've got a bigger microphone or something like that. It's very, very strange. FormerLEO's in the House says Elon Musk wins a $2 billion lawsuit over the acquisition of Solar City filed by Tesla shareholders. Looks like another win by Musk. I wonder if he can recover any legal fees. That's over from Business Insider. Yeah, Musk is, he's just a mover. He just keeps going and going and going. Now, the stock market is in a pretty precarious position these days. And so people are wondering whether that's going to have any impact on his acquisition. And I know that that is still sort of a long, drawn out process throughout the remainder of the year. But very interesting. Settling with them cost them $60 million when they settled prior. So Elon's still on a roll. Here's a story, or looks like a political cartoon from Grouchy Old Cat Lady. Says, Senator Manchin's complaint then was that trillions of dollars in new spending would stoke inflation. Voila. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is now pitching a tax increase as a cure for price increases. Here we've got Reagan sitting down or writing, people who think a tax boost will cure inflation are the same ones who believe another drink will cure a hangover. That's Cheers. Is that supposed to be Joe Biden? I think that is, right? Is that Joe Biden? I don't know if I really appreciate that caricature. Sort of looks, I think it's Joe. Right? I'm not sure. Hopefully it is. Grouchy Old Cat Lady saying here, DHS's new Disinformation Governance Board, better known as the Ministry of Truth, just in times for election, thanks three girlies for the idea. The Ministry of Peace concerns itself with war, the Ministry of Truth with lies, the Ministry of Love with torture, and the Ministry of Plenty with starvation. These contradictions are not accidental, nor do they result from ordinary hypocrisy. They are deliberate exercises in doublethink. George Orwell. Ministry of Truth. And I've got a video that I'm recording this afternoon on this. I put together a little bit of background on the woman who just got announced. Nina Jankowicz is going to be leading the Ministry of Truth. Found some good summations of sort of her philosophy. Jack Posobiec pulled a bunch of stuff through her Twitter. Ron Johnson, senator, wrote a letter over to DHS Mayorkas about this and said, hey, what are you classifying as disinformation? This could be a pretty big problem here. So Ron Johnson wrote a letter. We'll go through that one. We have another one here from Vienticus. Says the world is run by criminals. Reputed federal informant whistleblower found dead in L.A. after he's reported missing. Yeah, that sounds like a bad story. We had a complicated relationship. Devastating to hear a journalist who described him as a longtime source. So yeah, that is not a good story. Hopefully his family is all right. We have here another one comment from FormerLEO says, is it just me or the Biden administration a slow motion train wreck? I've never seen so many inept administrators in one administration. Take a good look at the Treasury, transportation, energy, Homeland Security, defense, interior, state, DOJ, because it appears that the search for the most incompetent administrators are arousing success. It appears they applied the Peter Principle by appointing people that are undeniably unqualified, except they meet Biden's equity goals by checking off boxes. Yeah, I mean, things have been pretty rough. I mean, for all of them. Treasury, inflation, we've got interest rate increases expected throughout the year, 50 basis points at least. Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, he was on like 3 months of maternity leave, and now he's back. And I don't know that any supply chain problems have been alleviated. Used car prices were through the roof. Chip shortages all over the place with cars in general. We have Cobalt, made a video on that one yesterday, that is now 80% owned essentially by China thanks to Hunter Biden. Energy prices through the roof. Just look around at gas prices, right? Homeland Security. Well, Mayorkas just created the misinformation government bureau, appointed a czar there. Defense Department, not so good. What do they have accomplished under their belt? We've got, well, Afghanistan didn't work out too well for them. And then they were screaming about all of the deterrents that they were going to put in place to prevent Russia from encroaching upon Ukraine. That didn't work out either. Behind that, of course, is Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Interior, we had an infrastructure bill that was passed. Joe Biden wanted more money. Didn't really get that crammed through, but inflation is through the roof. If you check out Trueflation, I think dot whatever, it's an organization that reports the actual true cost of things, and that's something like 13%, even though they're reporting 7%. DOJ under Merrick Garland, they lost a January 6th case in DC for a bench trial. They also lost the Governor Whitmer plot. DOJ lost that one. Pretty incompetent there. So it's sort of crumbling over at the FBI. We know that the DOJ was interfacing with the January 6th Fake Select Committee. New reports coming out that they're sort of unhappy where this is going, and it's not looking too good. Yeah, so I think on every single one of those, you're absolutely right, FormerLEO. F. We have Vientica says, now this is really stupid. Realistically, it's a way for big manufacturers to squeeze more profit out of the resale of their clothing and or to make clothing permanently rented. Oh my goodness. Digital ID in your clothes so you can just resell them like an RFID or something. Is a used clothing market, something that requires like chips and stuff like that? I'm not sure about it. If you haven't read this book, do it. The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve. I think I read that like in college. I really don't even remember. There was a whole period of time when I was reading a bunch of those books. I'll have to look at it again, Vienticus. Mr. MVP is here, says breaking federal court enters a temporary restraining order against the Biden administration for the lawsuit over suspension of Title 42. I did see that. Didn't go through it. I think this is something that we've seen this happen many times. Temporary restraining order goes up to the Court of Appeals, reversed, and back and around and around we go. I really think that this is sort of what the administration wanted. They don't want to anger their base by keeping it up because this is a, quote, racist Trump policy, but they also don't want an increased border problem more than they've already concocted themselves. So they're going to do, sort of this, we lost this lawsuit, but really they've got an election coming up. They don't need another border crisis. We've already had season 2 of that one when the Haitian migrants came and set up camp down there in southern Texas. Don't want that to happen again as the election nears in November. Another from Mr. MVP, Judge Cooper denied Joffe's motion to strike him from the Sussmann indictment. Yeah, so I didn't even see that one come through. And that was, it looks like a couple days ago. So Sussmann, there's been so many of them filed. And I'm waiting for the results of oral arguments, as we sort of talked about at the start of this. It's going to give us a lot of bearing about where this case is going. Mr. MVP, new target, Mark Elias. Another filing. Yep, they're investigating the Clinton campaign. We did talk about some of that. Grouchy old cat lady says, now I know where all the woke Twitter users went at first mention Elon buying Twitter. Meta. They went over there? Meta soars as Facebook reports better than expected daily users. Well, I think they don't like Meta either. They want a total controlled platform. They had that with Twitter, essentially. They're very angry that they don't. But Facebook is a good alternative because we know how Zuckerberg likes to play with things. I missed this one from a few days ago from Three Girlies talking about the Ark Encounter. It's where they have the life-size Ark built to biblical specification. It was made by creationist Ken Ham, located in Kentucky. And I had no idea this was even a thing. We talked about this was referenced in another headline video. But here, it's in Kentucky, daily hours, 1 to 7 p.m. Pretty amazing. And I remember, I think I was a boy when I watched a documentary on this, and there was an explorer or somebody who sort of thought he identified it, what's the word when wood turned petrified into the side of a mountain, and sort of, had traced it all around. I thought it was fascinating. And it's kind of one of those things that you wonder, like literally what it might look like. And then this guy built it. So that's amazing. I don't have an excuse to go to Kentucky, but next time I'm in that area, that looks like it would be a fun experience. So thanks for that, Three Girlies. Jumping over to YouTube member and supporters. Thank you, everybody. Here we've got Bull Gator Team yesterday on the headline show. Said, Rob, thanks for the docket update and confirming what is going before the judge. Good job. Well, thank you, Bullgator. And today we'll have a follow-up to that because the minute entries are now updated. We covered that at the beginning. Bonnie's here says, more money for domestic terrorism means more money to create more reasons to arrest the Republicans. And yes, now we have a new government misinformation, disinformation czar. And I'm going to be releasing a video about that here this afternoon. But you can see Capitol Hill Police, they want more investigations, January 6th fake select committees that don't even comport with the House rules, all just new tools that they can use to maintain control. Another one from Bonnie says, check out the comments on locals in the processed foods article. Speech Unleashed posted about food shortages. Down another rabbit hole. Oh, great, Bonnie. I know how that feels. Great. We mentioned that in the headlines show. I'm going to have to pull that up from Speech. Here's that thread over on locals. Grouchy Old Cat Lady shared this, says, since you're interested in the coming food shortage, here's another nail in the coffin on poultry, talking about millions dead due to the new avian bird flu, which is going to be just great. And here's another one from Grouchy Old Cat Lady, says, I don't know yet one way or another, except for the Hepburn, Idaho plane crash. That one was a local per my family. It was really just an accident. Private pilots run in my family, except for me. They live in southern Idaho. I don't think they need any help creating a food shortage at all. I'll see if I can find food distributors, farms, dairies, etc. that have been hacked too, and see what the fertilizer plants are up to. I like this article that lists the food processing plants by date in 2022, gives the numbers and information for the years prior as well. Why are Americans' food processing plants suddenly exploding? Is this article over from Clever Journals. Is it normal, they say? America's seen a lot of fires. We got April 21st, plane crashed in Georgia, major food processing plant in California. April 13th, another one in Heyburn, East Idaho. April 11th, New Hampshire. Rio Fresh Onion, March 31st. Goes through all the dates, saying the number here of fires per year, according to the National Fire, these fires cause the article says that there was an average of 22,900 fires per year in storage occupancies for 1994 to 1998. But maybe it's not all that high because there were about 1,410 warehouses, not just food processing fires per year between 2014 and 2019. So it may just be people sort of seeing something, noticing it, and then finding what they're seeing, sort of identifying a target and then searching that data out. Confirmation bias. Here, I'm not sure, but it's a very interesting story, and I think it's certainly worth asking. Food prices are going up. There's going to be major shortages as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. So very interesting stuff to follow, no doubt. So that was over from Bonnie, who's on YouTube and on Locals. Gail Rosenthal is responding to the Biden-paid hunters China bills video that we put out last night. Says, Robert, can these deals be undone if found to be products of corrupt practices? I mean, on the big deal that we talked about in that video, I don't think so. I mean, at this point in time, China owns 80% of that mine. So what are you going to say? China, it wasn't a fair deal. We're going to sue you in the world NATO criminal UN bogus whatever. They're going to go, that's fine. Yeah, all right. We've got cobalt. You don't get any batteries now. So I don't think, it's done. They have control of the mine. They got it through legitimate means, I guess, according to world standards. So what can they possibly undo about that? Deborah Yunker is here. Says, are we surprised? Joe watched the Clintons sell 20% of our uranium and nothing happened to them. Our government has run rogue because there's no consequence for anything. Crooked officials can roam free to do whatever they say. And look at all the millionaires that sit in our government who basically became paupers. After 2 years of being in the government, they're millionaires. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it's just a big, gigantic grift. You have the Democrats are in charge for a certain period of time. We're currently in that phase. They're going to grift off the American people and just ransack the treasury and spend for their little pet projects and enrich themselves. And then their voters are going to get sick of it because they're not going to do anything. So they're going to kick them out. And the Republicans are going to come in here and they're going to fix everything. And the Republicans are going to come in. And they're going to grift off the American people and ransack the treasury and inflate everything to the wazoo and tell you that they're going to care about big tech and the border and low taxes and all the garbage. And then they're going to do the same thing the Democrats did. And the pendulum swings back and forth and around we go. Meanwhile, you and I are getting sick and nauseous throughout the ride. We don't want to go on it anymore. And so that, my friends, is it for the headlines, the stories, the amazing comments, and I appreciate all your support. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, would love it if you shared it with somebody. Just said, hey, this guy's talking about some fun stuff on the regular. And if you invited them over here, that helps the channel grow, which helps us, reach more people and gives us more tools to do more fun stuff here. And so I appreciate that. And I hope that if you're already here, you're already subscribed. But if you're not, there's a big red button on YouTube called subscribe. Just got to Make an account if you don't already have one. Subscribe. That makes sure that I show up in your channels list, and hopefully you get the notifications so you can come back, because I look forward to seeing you on the next one.